Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I'm going to work on a reel that Michael sent me in. It's barely turning, and I'm guessing that this is just going to be one of these cases where we have an old reel. In this case, it's the Compac 90 Cadillac VI, patent pending, made in Japan. So I'm thinking that's the problem that we're going to have here, is just that it's loaded with grease that's dried. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this reel apart, we're going to service it and try and clean up that stuff. If it's not a broken part, we should be able to get this one rolling again. And we're going to do the service by starting with the exterior pieces and parts and removing them. I'll start with the handle. You can crank this handle on back by turning it clockwise. And there's a little washer behind there, remember that. And I took those exterior pieces and parts off. I put them in a parts tray, which is the bottom of the jug. And while I'm taking these parts off, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank our first responders and essential personnel and everybody involved in keeping us safe during the pandemic. You are our local hometown heroes, and truly do appreciate your efforts, everything you're doing during the pandemic to keep us safe and out of harm's way. And to those that have fallen ill to the disease, trying to restore them to health. Thank you for everything that it is that you do. All right, well, this has a double side to it. There's a side on the right here that's a cover plate. There's also a side on the other side that is also screwed on with the handle and gear. And we're going to just take these off. And while I do this, I kind of recommend that you take pictures along the way, because the pictures will help you to get oriented in terms of finding your way back when it's time to reinstall. That's one of the reasons why I use the parts tray, because the parts tray typically is a good repository for all of my pieces and parts, and when it is time to reinstall, well, I can find them. One of the things I just found out here is that you have to take both sides off, because the crosswind block, which is holding the axle shaft, has two screws that are mounted from the other side of the reel here, so you can't skip and just take the gear side off. I did also see a lot of dried grease in there. Hopefully that's the culprit. Hopefully we'll be able to get this one back out there running again. So one of the things you want to note as you're taking these off is the size of the screws. And what I just noticed here is that the side plate screws on the gear side are longer than the side plate screws on the other side, but both are the same size. That's important to note, again, for reinstall. We should be able to take this off. Yeah, I'm having a hard time turning this by hand. That's a good indication that this is basically dried grease. I want to flip this switch. I want to see which one allows me to go reverse. That's probably that one. And we're going to just push the gear up, and that's really what's stopping this reel right here. You can just see we're just shellacked on with the old grease, and it's actually chipping off here. You can see that. This is a good place to take a picture. Just in case you pop the screw out, or the spring out here, you can see how that spring is mounted in the case, and you'll be able to put that back on. So this one has a tag end that goes down into the side case, and it has an upper tag end which mounts to the back of this cam. One of the good things to do here with the dried grease is to chip it out a little bit. You want to be sensitive to the case and all. You don't want to ruin anything inside there. And then just spray it with some penetrating oil and just let it rest on the side while you go about cleaning the other stuff. So we're going to start on this one now. I'm using a screwdriver as a scraper in this case, just to get that old stubborn grease kind of started and getting it off. You can see how much that penetrating oil starts to dissolve the old grease right away. I generally will use a penetrating oil as a degreaser. I do not use it as a lubricant, even though the side of the bottle says that it's a lubricant in addition. Now I'm going to use some light steel wool just to kind of buff off the excess that I wasn't able to scrape off. with the spool. This is 4-0 steel wool. It's the lightest or least abrasive of the parts or the steel wool that's manufactured. All right, we're going to do the same thing on the inner part of this now. Just kind of peel this off. You can see why it wouldn't work very well here. It's just being very stubborn. It's also been shellacked on. Notice that there's a little copper sleeve that goes on that stud that's going to drive in the anti-reverse, or the spool crosswind block rather. Make sure that you locate that and that you keep it well. All right, a little bit more of that. We'll go switch over to the paper towels again. And a mop-up duty. Now we're going to make sure all that old grease gets out of there. I just had of all things, a pencil sharpener. Don't ask me how I got involved in that one, but I had a pencil sharpener that wasn't turning, and as it was, old shavings from the pencils that were being sharpened jammed the internal gearing. That was an electric one, if you're wondering. So it happens all around, and trying to take care and not make it so that it doesn't happen to you. All right, that certainly is a lot nicer than it was. And let's see how we're doing over here with this penetrating oil. Is just a little bit more left on that anti-reverse. And it looks like all I needed to do is break that contact there. And we have a nice sound anti-reverse dog again. There we go. Very good. All right, we'll just put that override in play again so that when we go to reinstall the main gear, that doesn't get in the way. If you tried to reinstall it in the down position, you'd bump into these ratchets and you wouldn't be able to successfully install it. Grease onto the shoulder. We'll grease the main part of the gear later. We'll put that in, just make sure, oh, look at the difference already, right? All right, so I'm just going to set that aside for a moment. We'll come over to remove that axle shaft, clean up the balance of this. And you can see, even without the gear in there, it still turns very hard, and that's all dried grease. So this is a lesson to be learned kind of a thing here. You may find yourself at a flea market, a garage sale, a yard sale or something, and find one of these reels and wonder why it isn't turning and is it worth purchasing. Well, if you're into the art of reel repair and you want to learn, I call these tuition reels. Pick it up, bring it back with you, and see if it's a matter of the dried grease, which it clearly is here. And if it is, then you'll be able to get a nice reel inexpensively, and you'll be able to learn what we're learning here, which is what makes this reel go and what makes it stop. In this case, what made it stop was the grease. So I just used 4-0 to just clean up the axle shaft. I'm going to put that to the side. Now we should be able to remove this block, and you can just see it's just loaded with that dried grease. So this is kind of rinse and repeat, right? It's just going to be a matter of doing a little bit of this cleaning. So if you like these kinds of videos, if you like learning about fishing reels, why they, maybe sometimes why they fail, I do enough of those, and how to repair them, and the technologies behind them and the like, then I would ask you to subscribe. And if you do subscribe, please hit the notification button. That notification button will let you know when I post. I post frequently, and those posts will allow you to see which ones are there and which ones you would like to learn more about, and quite honestly, which ones to skip. I've been doing this now for about 3 years. It's really a look over my shoulder in my shop as projects come in. This reel belongs to Michael. He sent it in, and not all of them interest everybody, but if you find one that you're interested in, please take the time to take a look at it. All right, that's just been scraped and cleaned off. We're going to come up top now. We're going to remove the nut that's holding the rotor on, and we can see that there's a lot of sand in the bowl of this one. And that's one of the problems with the early reels, is you didn't have skirted spools where the spool went over the rotor. The spools in this case, and many of those at the time, went under. Well, there's no drainage. So when you get water, or in this case some sand and the like in here, then it's got nowhere to go. All right, I'm experimenting now. I was trying to turn it to the right, and it wasn't moving, so I'm turning it against, or clockwise, non-traditional, and that's how it's coming off. So you need to test these. Some reels do come off in that counterclockwise manner. All right, we'll take that off. We should be able to remove the rotor now. Put those two pieces into my parts tray. Let's get that sand out of there. Whenever I'm working with something that has a lot of sand in it, like this one, I do like to work with it kind of off the bench, because I don't want that sand getting into the next project. Overall, it's a nice reel. I'm kind of liking what I'm seeing here, and I encourage you, if you have the opportunity to find one of these. It looks like a easy enough reel to work on, and it also looks like it's a very durable reel. All right, once you've taken the time to do that, this wire is just a pivot wire, but it's a good opportunity to just put a little bit of oil on that and give it a test. Let's see if it fires. It opens for the casting position. Come on underneath here and hit the trip mechanism, and yep, it fires. So that's doing what that should be doing at the moment. All right, bowl's cleaned out. And last little piece of sand there. Sand is one of my least favorite things to work with on a reel because it jams everything. All right, the bigger pieces I didn't put into my parts tray, the smaller ones I have. Now we're going to take the collar off that holds the bearing in place so we can go ahead and service the rest of this reel. Notice that the trip mechanism for the bail is right near the point where it intersects with the reel arm. You need to note that, because if you put this thing in a different direction, it's going to trip at a different point. They're usually designed to keep the bail from hitting you as you trip it. All right, just lay in the screws on the desk to make sure that they're the same size screw. Then we'll clean up this piece, and hopefully we'll be able to get this thing back working again. The collar should come off, and with any luck, look at that, Chris, with any luck we were able to pull that out. We can see that it is just totally jammed here with more dried grease. So that's why it's not spinning easily. All of this is in a collar, and that collar obviously is having trouble getting around the block because it's just so full of junk. I'm going to just spray down the bearing with this as well. Come over here and do the same thing we've just been doing. So if you're finding this kind of, I've been there, done that, saw that already, then why don't you go get a cup of coffee and come on back. I'm sure that it won't take more than a minute or so. Those of you that are still hanging around, if you have any questions about this reel or any reel in particular, I'll try and help you out with them. Just leave the questions in the comment section of the video here. It doesn't have to be on this reel. It can be on any reel. Maybe you're working on one. Maybe you're got a question about how to clean reels. We've certainly done a lot of that today. Maybe the question involves the lubrication that you want to use on a reel, where to source parts for reels, things like that. I'm going to go ahead and leave those in the comment section. I try to answer those. That's probably the best way to reach me. Some folks try calling, and that's kind of hit or miss. If I'm in the shop, particularly if I'm in the shop doing a video, I certainly am not going to answer the phone. And the other times, if I'm deep involved in a reel, it takes a little bit of concentration while I can't get there either. All right, I started by scraping off the old grease. Now I'm using a wired brush to clear those channels. And you want to clear both the inside and the outside of this. That grease got everywhere, and this reel's probably sat on a shelf for some time now. And that's why all this stuff dried up. It hasn't been used. The good news is I'm not seeing the sand that I saw in the bowl on the bottom of this. That's a beautiful main gear, or pinion gear. All right, I think we got it. Very good. All right, so we're going to just kind of reverse the process. Let's check that bearing out. I wanted to make sure that that bearing was spinning. There's no sense putting on a bearing that isn't spinning. And actually, I'm going to see if I have a replacement bearing for this one. Okay, so I'm not happy with this one, but I'm fortunate that I have a replacement bearing, and we're going to go ahead and use the replacement bearing. So I'm going to put a little bit of grease onto the shaft where the bearing is going to ride. I'm going to oil the bearing. I oil bearings, not grease, and maybe that piece over there is an example why that's bogged down with dried grease in it. And put the bearing on. While I'm at it, I'm going to take my grease brush and I'm going to grease the pinion gear, which is so nicely cleaned. And because this hasn't seen grease in a long time and we've kind of broke everything out of there, I'm just going to go ahead and grease the entire piece. There's one more piece left before we put this thing back together again. That's to get that old grease off the channels here. That's important because the crossline gear is going to ride in this channel, and you want to make sure that it's not hitting bumps of dried grease. I'm just using a paper towel here. It seems to be doing the job. Okay, now how many times have I done this where the next thing up is I start assembling it from the wrong side? Well, the answer is a lot. These double-sided ones, kind of funny like that. If you're not concentrating, you won't realize that this is the back side of the reel and this is the gear side of the reel. We're going to go ahead and take the gears now. Actually, I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm just going to put a light coat of grease onto the side of the bearing here. That's going to help keep it free on that side case, and the next guy who goes to pull it out will be thankful to me for doing that. Remember what we said now, this little ramp on this goes to the back along the handle, and I left those 3 screws right on my desk. All right, just finishing up now on the screws. Get rid of that old bearing that's sitting there. This is that washer that goes on the shield. Rotor on next. Rotor washer on top. Remember, this one was a clockwise removal, so it goes on counterclockwise. Just like that. Switch the directions on your ratchet. I have to use a deep socket because we're going inside that bowl. Give it a spin. Oh yeah, with that new bearing, boy, that nice package there. All right, again, this is the gear side. So the next thing we want to do then, I'm going to take this off just to, because we probably want to inspect the drive washers anyway. And insert the axle shaft with just a little bit of grease on it. Start that through. And we want to grab our crosswind block. Crosswind block is going to mount from underneath, but it's going to screw in from this side. So you need to locate those 2 screw holes. Then get the 2 screws that belong in there next. So a nice reel overall. This is part of those Japanese-made reels in the late 60s and 70s. There's an awful lot of them that were contracted and became store brands or became sub-brands of the U.S. manufacturers in that day. They found that they couldn't make the saltwater reels in the spinning variety as efficiently and effectively as the Japanese at that time. They kind of lost their technology lead, and then they started contracting with the Japanese to do it, with the success of like Ryobi and Daiwa and the like. All right, we just want to put grease onto the front face of this gear now. We've taken care underneath. You want to get the grease into the teeth, and you want to get it onto the face because that crosswind gear or block is going to ride there. Kind of line it up, and this is an eyeball sort of a thing. Get the stud into the hole, and then turn the rotor, and if your handle is turning and your shaft is going up and down, you've successfully mated the two. We said that we have the long screws on this side, so let's go ahead and put the long screws in. It's a good time to tell you, if you have a reel that needs service, maybe you have this reel and you picked it up at a yard sale or something and took a look at it and said, well, it's beyond me, I'm not really interested in doing that. Well, I do repair reels by mail, like I'm doing for Michael here. And if you have that kind of reel and you would like to know more about my service, please send me an email to the address on the business card that follows. I'll be happy to provide you with that repair information. All right, 2 more screws to go. Take care of this side, put the other side plate in, check the drag washers, finish this reel up. Overall, very clean reel, just hasn't been fished in quite some time. It's ready to go fishing again. Had to take all the old dried grease out of it and use a step-by-step process to do that. All right, this side is done now. While I'm doing that, some folks ask about using mechanical screwdrivers to remove and insert screws. I don't recommend them. They tend to bind. If you over tighten them, you can risk cracking a case and causing other kinds of damage. There's a lot of torque in them. If you do need an assist, I realize that there's a lot of screws and it takes a lot of hand strength. If you do need an assist, use that mechanical screwdriver after you start the screw to make sure that it's threading properly, and leave it short before you finish it by hand. Don't drive it all the way home with one of those drivers. That will cause problems. I've seen the problems come in. Okay, we're going to put that back on. 2 more of these short screws. Remember what we said, the short screws belong on the non-gear side. So overall, a very nice reel. I don't know the exact date of it, so my guess would be early 70s. But I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to take this one fishing again. Certainly we're not jammed up and stuck like we were, and that's all good, right? If you have an idea for a video, if those of you that have been watching my channel for a while know that I try to do a lot of different coverage points on these, but if you have an idea for a video that you think everybody would enjoy, then leave the note in the comments. If I can do it, I will certainly try to create one that kind of solves your need. I took this retention ring out of the drag stack. I'm going to find out what's in here from a drag washer standpoint. And we have old felt washers in here, so old felt washers get oil. So we want to make sure that the cavity is clean. The whole idea with these washers is to keep them lubricated so that they don't tear or break. So we're just going to give it a good dose of fishing reel oil. going to make sure that these washers have any dirt and grease and grime removed from them. And then we're going to stack them alternately. We have 2 round washers and 1 eared washer. The eared washer goes in the middle. Put that second one up there, give that a good drink. You can just oil the top of them, they will seep through. Alright, that's just tarnish. One more. Same treatment. And we have the cap washer there. And we can put this back in. Usually you can get this in by hand strength. Find the groove that it rides in. Get the 1 point down. Just kind of roll it around. Just hold it. It's a spring. It will shoot. And then just kind of push it down. Alright, let's mount this thing. Let's put the handle back on. Everything seems to be coming together. And we'll see how we did. Alright, the drags are holding. There was a washer that went on the shaft there. I want to turn this counterclockwise to thread it. Let's give it a ride. Oh, there you go. That new bearing makes all the difference in the world. This is a nice performer. Make sure that you check the bail. Snaps nicely. So that's it. That's your Compac 90 Cadillac VI, patent pending, made in Japan, circa 1970s. How to take it apart, service it, and get it out there with the second chance. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please like it. If you want to see more, again, please subscribe. And again, if you're a first responder or essential personnel, thank you for all you're doing to keep us safe during the pandemic. So please stay safe, stay well, stay watching, and have a great day. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.